And in the prototyping cycle, we demonstrate what we have done, we refine it, we develop again. I think develop should be the first, of course. So we develop, demonstrate, and refine. This can go on as many times as possible until this can go on until we come up with a satisfying product. So from there, we can develop and deploy and go to testing. Yeah, so is prototyping necessary? I think, in my opinion, it's really necessary because I've been working on my personal project and it has taken me a lot of time trying to figure out the real solution that I wanted. And so these are some of the points why we need to prototype. It helps your team build ideas and test them earlier before you invest a lot of time in them. Think about Facebook. Oh, that's a big app. What can we think about? Maybe Uber. Yeah, so the people who built Uber just did it fast and brought it to the market. Then they realized they didn't have a map for us. So that would have been a loss after building it and looking for funding. So maybe they prototyped, some users gave them feedback and said, we need a map to see where we are going. We need a real-time sharing. And then prototypes can help you get closer to users. There's nothing as challenging as understanding the user insights. Some people have dedicated their lives in their lifetime learning in how to understand users in terms of design thinking and what users really want. Many apps have failed because of users. For example, right now, universities are trying to force students to take exams online, but users are not ready. There's a resistance all over. So users are very important. When you have a prototype to show, you can really get the real feedback, the insights that are not easy to talk about. Mostly when we send questionnaires, we get the feedback that is easy to talk about, but we leave the part where the user feels a lot of things, but they can't talk about them. So that a prototype will help you get that kind of feedback. And then also prototypes can help get you funding. I have a short clip. Tell me if you can hear it.
Or is it just?
Can you hear it?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't think we can hear it properly.
It's very faint.
Yeah.
Hey Joy, you can hear it?
I don't think we can hear it properly.
Okay. Oh. So, okay. Maybe I'll just keep it for now, but let me explain. This is a scene in the most famous series among all programmers and wannabes, juniors and seniors, where Richard Hendricks made a prototype of his Pied Piper app. And then a few employees at Huli saw it and then told their boss. So in this scene, he was offered a lot of money just because his prototype could do something really great. Find some time to watch this video. There's the title here, and it shows the power of a prototype. Okay, so sorry. What is an MVP? I've just moved from a prototype to an MVP. I think these things are similar, so I wanted to talk about these two. So an MVP is like the first thing you take to the market. It's also used for getting user feedback, but it's a kind of more mature product that you have done and you're sure this has the essential functionalities that a user can use. For example, we have some few apps in Kenya which try to copy Uber. we had Little as the first app that I saw that was closest to Uber. When I looked at it in its first stage, it was like an MVP. They've added a lot of things later, but it only allowed you to order and go. It had less functionality, but right now it has been built up to a stage where you can add your corporate, you can add your company and offer your employees rides without paying for cash or extra, without needing an extra intervention. So an MVP is like a prototype, but it's something that you offer to the market and they are ready to use it. So it is a great concept in lean startups because you use very little effort to make it and you will get the feedback. And if it doesn't work, you will have a little energy left to work on it. Yeah. So let's talk about the kinds of prototyping that we have. We have full stack prototyping that I've also been doing for myself. So when it comes to full stack prototyping, you want to build a full app just to get feedback from the users. I think that's it's a long shot. If you look at it this way, you have to build the database, you have to build the backend and the front end. And then just take it to the users. And then before you even show them what it does, they'll say, I don't need it. I don't think I have that problem. Like a parking app, you want people to be able to find parking spaces. And then you build a whole app, you host it, you pay for the hosting services, you pay for the database, and then you take it to the user and then they say, I already have one. I don't think I need this right now. Or maybe yours doesn't work as good. It's not as good as whatever we already have in the market, so I won't need it. You see, you'd have already spent a lot of money. You'd have paid your devs. You'd have given away equity or something. So full stack prototyping might, for us who are starting to build our apps, for us who are getting ideas, it's not viable to move forward. So what is there for us? So, okay, I've explained the problems. One of the problems might be you have to change the schema. For example, you've noticed that your users have another field that you have to add, and then you'll have to change the database, also change the backend code, how it brings the data from the database. And also, when we talk of separation of concerns, a full stack app has good separation of concerns. The API is different and all that. But think about it this way. If you're just one person, you don't have funding to pay other devs, then you need to build the entire thing by yourself. But maybe you don't have the knowledge of a backend technology. You don't have the knowledge of DevOps. So you'd want to build it in one place with a language that you know. Yeah. So you might not understand some technologies too. So it's not a viable option for people who are just starting out and trying to take a product to the market. So just an interlude, during ideation, your idea should be the most important thing. You should never lose sight of your idea by being distracted by some technologies. I heard Deno came up, a new framework came up. Like people who work with JavaScript, we have a lot of problems because right now I'm trying to check out new frameworks, Redux.js, Jamstack. I don't know, it's a lot. But then during that time, you lose the track of your idea. You don't know what you are trying to build. And then you follow the technology. So keep it as simple as possible. Keep the code as minimal as possible as you try to put your idea out there to the people who need it. You might use the best technology ever, but then when you present your app out there, they'll just say, I don't have this problem. Like you need to check your idea. Maybe you need to change it or tweak it. So the technology doesn't matter. Keep your prototype as simple as possible. So the easier way out. So I was trying to build an app for helping candidates prepare their CVs and giving them feedback on job applications. So I looked at all the technologies I could find. There were some really good things there. I looked at Nest.js, Next.js, and all that. I tried learning Vue. I tried learning less CSS and all that. It was cool, and I felt good about myself. But then later on, I noticed I was just losing track. So I came back to good old Firebase and what they've done with React and Redux. It can help us really do a good job. So this is just a GIF I got from the internet to demonstrate how simple it really is. You just have this is a full stack app powered by Firebase. This is the database. This is the app. It's a to-do app. You just add and then it appears in your database. And the code is just on the front end. It just runs on the browser. A user won't even care about that. If they need a to-do app and it does what they think it does, then they'll appreciate it. So Firebase and Firestore, that's a bit of history. I was also shocked to notice that Firebase wasn't an original idea from Google. I thought Google were really smart for bringing it up, but it happens some other people built it and it was acquired. So you can read about Firebase later on. Sorry. So React is like the most popular front-end JS library right now. I know a few JS people on the call might call me out on this, but I think it's the most popular. I go to every website and see a blue button on my browser indicating that it's from React. I went to the Uber website yesterday. It's from React. Twitter, I don't know, a lot of them. So, and Redux is a predictable universal state container for React, where you can share your state all over. For people who have done front-end frameworks like Angular, you know how state should be shared. So some applications can fully work on the front end using the code that you write in React. They can fully work on the front end, and you don't need any code to run on the server. So that's a win for people who are prototyping because you don't need to have another code somewhere else. An example is a shopping cart. Maybe it's just about fetching data. So you can put that data on your real-time database in Firebase and then just fetch it when the user needs it. But when you really need to have server-side code, you can consider some serverless functions like Firebase Cloud Functions and also AWS Lambdas, which was our first workshop. So this is how I did it. I stumbled upon a package called React Redux Firebase. I think it's gold to me because it helped me save a lot of time. I had given up in building my app because it took a lot of time to decide on the tools. But this was really simple. So what you do is you just use a hook called Firebase Connect. You connect your Firebase to Redux, and then all your data comes to Redux. So in Redux, you have a state that contains your data, and then you just call it and use the data in your React components. So it's as simple as that. Maybe we should demo. So maybe we should show some code so that we don't just have empty talk. So for this demo, I built an app. It was built really fast. So it's a very simple thing, just a day. It is a chat app. Let's say maybe a simple WhatsApp, but that's why it's a prototype. It has very, very few functionalities. How it works is you can just send a message and it will indicate that you send the message at what time and all that. So Hostlack already sent a message, but let me send another one just to ask Joy if she's the MC for today. So it will send the message and say, yeah, oh, sorry, this is still the question. Hello, Joy, are you the MC for today? A few seconds ago. So Joy might not see this message because she's not here. So she's not on my app, but I'll just sign her up. Yeah, so let's say her name is Joy, and then email at. I'm sure this email is already taken. Yeah, so let's sign Joy up. She was signed up successfully, and you can see her username is here. So we'll just go back home to the chat, and then Joy will see someone asked a question, so Joy will just answer. So Joy answered, hell yeah. Okay, so that's a simple application that I wanted to use to demonstrate what really Firebase can do to you. So to build this, what I first did was go to the Firebase console, just the normal Firebase console. I'm sure a lot of us have Google accounts, at least Gmail. So if you go to the Firebase console here, you can add a project. Just add a project name, call it, what do I call it? Random. I'm sure that's taken. No, this is a random project, not taken. And then here, you just continue. I don't need Google Analytics. Wow, that's taking too long. Okay, let's continue. So I have a random project here, and now I need to create my app. In my app, I'll have the database, and then they'll give me two options. So let's just create a web app. You can create any. There's Android. I'll just create a web app because that's what I'm building, and say chat app. So I won't register for Firebase hosting for now, but you can explore that later. And then so this information is really important. Don't worry about seeing my API key because I'll just delete it after this call. So this information, you can just copy this, whatever is inside here, and that's all you need. After that, you can continue to your console. So right now I'm in this project, right? On the sidebar, you can see the database, and that's the most important thing that we need for now. We have two kinds of databases. So let's just create a database. We'll do in test mode, and there are some rules here that you can tinker with. So if I leave the rules the way they are, my database will be closed after 30 days because they are insecure. Anyone with my credentials can write to them. But I'll leave it for now. Okay, so I'll just choose the closest database to me, which is Europe. Wow. Okay, so we have our database now, but if you look at this option, this is Cloud Firestore. It's a more persistent database. It's also document oriented. It's like MongoDB, but it's fully hosted. You can just query it. And also we can have the real-time database, which is faster. When you change something in your code, it changes directly because this is a real-time one. So let's use the Cloud Firestore. So here I just created my messages collection. A collection is like a table. So auto-generate my ID, and then I added the fields that we needed. If we look at the app, the fields we needed first was the username, and then the message, which is the text, and then the timestamp. So I did all that, but I'll skip this for now and go to my finished demo. So here I have a collection of messages. Once you have a message here, it sets the schema for any other subsequent messages that will come. If you try to add a message without the author, maybe you'll get an error. So this is the schema: author, text, timestamp, which is in seconds, and the username. So let's go back to our main solution here, which was connecting our Firebase to our React app to make it really fast. So here we'll go to this React Redux Firebase. It's a new package. People have been using it and it's popular, but it solves a lot of problems. So if you look at the examples here, you can choose the examples you want. For example, React Firestore, simple, TypeScript, and all that. So to set up my project, I used the Firestore one. And it was simple. I just downloaded the config. Then I added this. This is what I copied from my Firebase setup. And then, so this is the profile factory. I'll come back later to that. But you export this config that you create here, and you add a user profile to choose the people you log in. What kind of table are you going to have for them in the Firestore? So for user profile, I'll use a table called users. That's why you see this was created automatically, users here. And then that's the config. Another config that you need from them, from their example, is this. It has been really complex to set up Firebase and Redux before. And so we still need to reference the window when looking for the initial state to set for the store. But it has been done here. So you just use their config and then you add your component here. I added my main component, which is home, and configured the store. This store has also been configured for you. As I said, you still have to check the window if it's not undefined, so that you can have your config being create a store using the Redux dev tools. But I'll skip that for now. You can just get this from the config that they have from this GitHub example, Firestore. Okay, so let's go to the chart file. This is what I wanted to show us. First of all, when submitting a message, I just have an ordinary form here that collects my text, and then when submitting a message, look at this. I just said firebase.collection, and I looked at the collection messages and added this text and all that. How did I get this Firebase? It's just a hook, a simple hook called Firestore. Use Firestore. So this is a hook created by React Redux Firebase, and it helps you connect to your collection directly without any other things. So if this was a full stack app, here would have collected our data from the form and called an API here to add the data to the backend. But here we are interacting with the Firebase, with the Firestore directly. We are sending the message directly. And when the message is added, how do we get it back to show really fast? So Joy might ask, for example, why are you blue ticking me? Because I haven't answered her. So how does the message appear here so fast when I send it? There's this other hook called use Firestore Connect, which we imported from React Redux Firebase. So use Firestore Connect. It's like a listener. It is a listener on your collection. And in this case, it listens to a collection called messages that I showed you earlier. And I order them by the timestamp. So when you set this listener, whatever happens to your collection, if you add something, it will update it on your front end immediately. If you delete something, it will be updated immediately. So once I set this, I leave it there and then come back to my messages. So there's a new hook by React Redux that allows you to access the reducers without a lot of worry. For example, before use selector came, we used to do this map state to props, and then we destructure the state, get Firebase and Firestore, and then return them here. So if we log out the props here, we see there's Firebase, Firestore, and all that. But we don't have to do all that anymore. And I'll just delete the map state to props. So we only have this. And we can still access our store, our Redux store, by just saying use selector. So we get the Firestore and get the messages. So where is our store? Our store is in the reducers. Look at our entire list of reducers. We only need Firebase and Firestore. And this Firebase will help us access the data that we have in Firebase. And this will help us access the data that we have in Firestore. We've looked at the data that we have in Firestore. It's the data that we have in our database here. For example, messages. This is Firestore data. We can listen to it. We can listen to it this way and then access it using use selector. Also, we can look at the sign up functionality where we use the Firebase. So we start with the hook called use Firebase from the same package, React Redux Firebase, and then from there we say Firebase create user. So your entire sign up is just firebase.create user, and then you add the credentials, email and password, and then the profile. The profile is any extra data that is not necessarily needed in the auth, but you need to add it. So this simple create user functionality will add a user into our Firebase authentication, like it added Joy here. And it will also add Joy to our user collection here with the email and username. So it will create the user. And after that, we have the user that has already been created, and they're already logged in at the same time. As you noticed, I created the user and it was logged in at the same time. And then if you come to the navbar here, we can access that user by just saying use selector firebase.profile. So we are going to fetch the profile that's in the Firebase state. As you can see here in the reducers, we have a Firebase state in our store. So in the navbar, we just get the profile of that person and check if it's empty or not, so that we choose what to show, and we also choose to show their username. Like we change my username to the person who signed up. So you can see it is just one line of code that helps you check if someone is logged in. And by accessing this profile, you can do many other things. You can check if it's empty, that means no one is logged in. You can check if it's loaded, that means it's still loading, and all that. So with these two pieces of state in our reducer in Redux, we have managed to build this chat app where someone can log in, add a message, and someone can reply their message and all that. I know you might say the UI is not good because I'm not on this side, or yeah, but that's why it's a prototype. So my emphasis was on the hooks that we have used. I've only used a few hooks, like use Firestore Connect, use Firestore, and use Firebase from this same React Redux Firebase package. But it can help you do something really fast, like in a day, and get feedback. For example, right now you might tell me, why are these colors not different? Why is the profile for Joy the same as mine, all black? We might argue that black matters, but then that's good feedback. So I'll just go ahead and change it before I invest a lot of time and maybe money on it. Yes. So let's go back to our presentation. I'll give time for the questions later. So teams that use Firebase, you find that Firebase is so easy to use that many teams have taken up. I recognize Lyft and Alibaba. I'm actually surprised by Alibaba because they have some great infrastructure on their own. So that means Firebase is good. It beats competition. And Lyft is also a huge company. So I have good faith in Firebase, and it has helped me a lot. So thank you. You have, I've given you a lot of time to ask questions, to get clarification from the parts of my presentation that maybe I rushed over or maybe weren't clear. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not connected my mic. Joy will not be able to continue emceeing because KPLT, I guess, has happened. Yeah, so I think I'll take over, take us through the Q&A. There's only one question on Slido. We were using Slido, and the event code was N. Let me see. It was N670. So you feel free to post the questions there if you have any questions. So there's an anonymous question, host luck for you on Slido. Prototypes get to production and become too critical to be replaced or refactored. Someone was wondering if you can share some strategies to ensure prototypes don't end up as immutable legacy apps.
Thank you, Anonymous. That's a good question. So when it comes to the software development life cycle, we have people prefer carrying their prototypes to the production environment, but people prefer killing it and starting over. So it will depend on your needs. If you have a very small dev team and you have tight deadlines to meet, it doesn't harm you to just take the prototype and present it to the users. But if you have good funding and you know you can break down your prototype and start over again, then it's actually case by case. And another thing, to prevent your prototype from becoming some shitty legacy code, that's why I presented this, Firebase. Have you seen how it's so easy to change something? I don't mean you use Firebase specifically, but I'm asking you to use some flexible technology. For example, I can just come here and change my schema and it will be live in like seconds. But when you use some crazy hard technology for your prototypes, it will be hard to change later. And it's also a question of your programming ethics. As I grow older in my programming, I realized that it's more fun to write code that can be changed by anyone rather than to write complex code that only you can understand. So to prevent that, just be considerate. Take someone who will edit that code later as you, and all will be well. Thank you.
Awesome. Good. Does anyone in the audience have a question? Feel free to speak up. You don't have to post it. And oh yeah, there is another question that just came in Slido as people continue to think about their questions. Another anonymous question: what are the costs associated with using Firebase in this manner?
Oh yeah, so Anonymous, thank you again. I hope you're not the same person. I'm glad you asked about the cost. I'm also amazed at how Firebase is working. So I wanted to look at the pricing, but maybe it's far away. Firebase. Okay. Okay, let's just continue. So Firebase offers you their services in terms of the number of calls you make, the number of fetches you make to your database. We could say the number of reads and writes. Writes not a lot, because you don't write a lot. For example, if you already have a running database, people tend to read it more than they write. So Firebase has focused on the reads. Sorry. So they are saying you pay 0.00 something dollars per 100,000 reads. Do you think that's expensive? You can unmute and say yes or no. Like it's so cheap. Right now, I've been working with Firebase on my new app for a while now, for a few months, but I haven't paid a coin. Yet I read every single day. I fetch my data from the DB every single day, and even other people fetch it, but it has never reached $1. So I think it's really cheap, if that's what you're asking.
Nice. That sounds pretty cheap. Awesome. Okay. Checking Slido one more time. Yes, there's no question on Slido. So now, if anyone has a question, feel free to unmute and just ask it live on the call.
Yeah, just unmute, man. So,
Wow, don't all speak at once, one at a time.
but no one is speaking.
That was the joke, horse luck. Come on.
Oh,
Try to keep up.
okay.
Checking Slido one more time. Come on, guys. Someone must have a question somewhere. Okay, cool. If we don't have any more questions, maybe someone would like to comment in typical Kenyan fashion. There we go. Mine is more of a comment. Checking Slido one more time. Come on, guys. Someone must have a question somewhere. Echo. Okay, cool. If we don't have any more
Question?
questions, maybe someone would like to comment
There's a question.
in typical Kenyan fashion. Yeah, please mute Hoslak.
Yeah, so my question is around, you've demoed how this works with Redux. Might you have a solution for people who'd want to use Firebase with GraphQL, for example?
Sorry, please come up again. I heard about GraphQL.
Oh yes, thank you for the presentation. And the demo was more focused to do with React, with Redux, and then with Firebase. So I was just wondering if you have explored or have come across any other library that uses Firebase along with GraphQL. Is my question.
Oh, yeah. So I looked at GraphQL, and the closest solution to what we have done right now is something we call Graph CMS. So with Graph CMS, you have a headless CMS. It means you can fetch data as an API, and you can use it in your React app or any other front end you can use it in. But the good thing is that you add data the same way we added data in Firebase. It's like a CMS, a UI, so you can add data, even create relationships with that. And I think it's the next big thing. Is that cliche? Yeah. Yeah,
That's
so it's
cliche.
nice.
It's true.
Yeah, so it's really good, and it's stable. They got funding, and they're really working to hear our needs. So it's the closest thing to what I've done. But check it out. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yep, waiting for another question.
Oh, who was that? Who was speaking?
That was me.
No, before you.
It's Nate.
Nate.
Oh, Nate. Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
Go ahead.
There's a point, host, like during the sign up and when you submitted a chat message, when you took the data from the form to the Firebase. So I wonder, might there be an instance of a race condition when you update the Firebase that way? Wouldn't it be better if you had a state to update the form values, then have a use effect hook to update the Firebase as it listens to the state changes?
Hello.
Hello.
I need more clarification on your question. Sorry.
Okay, you see, and go down.
Okay, done.
The form.
Yeah.
I said there's a form, right, where you submit data.
Yeah.
When you submit the function that's called, the callback that's called when you submit, the submit button is clicked.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah. So my question was that I'm seeing that it's like you're initiating an effect, and there's a side effect happening when you do this, because you're communicating directly to the Firebase. Won't that introduce a race condition if you don't update the state first, then have a hook, another hook, a use effect hook to listen to that state change, and then now initiate the Firebase create user function?
Oh, thank you. So about that, I had an option of adding the state listeners on my forms, but that would have also caused me to run a lot of functions on the front end. Another thing, if you look at this, if you look at how I submit this form, I don't need to call the use effect or any hook in the Firebase, sorry, in React. So when you say a REST condition, because I'm submitting this directly, I have never met such a situation where there's a REST condition. But I guess there are many ways of doing this, of submitting this. For example, I could say, I just set up another use state here that says form data, and then when the data is loaded, I submit it. But that with the React hooks, I'll have to add every single function here. In every input, I'll add a function to listen on change. Every input, I'll have a function to listen on change. I just preferred this other way of submitting when the form is fully loaded with the data, instead of running those continuous, what do we call them? You know, a browser can get overwhelmed. Or what do you think?
In a scenario where there's a form,
yeah,
I think you may approach it in a way that the submit button will, once it's clicked, it will just fill up. It will take all the data from the form and store it as an object in a use state.
In a use
and
state.
Then, yeah.
Later. Now I get you. So you mean when I submit, I store this in a state?
Yeah.
And then later on, it sends it to Firebase.
Yeah. Now a use effect listens to that state change
and submits it to Firebase.
Yeah.
So use effect listens to any state change, and that means anytime the state changes, it will submit something. So when we render, it will also submit something. Are you getting that? Like
Yeah,
when we yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah.
That the use effect can be, there's a way that can behave if you don't,
Yeah.
if, depending on the second argument you pass, the
Yeah.
dependency array.
Yeah.
So if you're to pass in, I think for this case, okay, for how I did it, I think I may have overlooked a implementation part. What I usually do is when the form values is updated to the object, the submit button is clicked to another state, use
Okay.
state. Now that's the one which is listened to by the Firebase use effect. I think it's more complicated, but I think from how you explained to me, you're doing the same thing.
Okay.
Because I hadn't considered the facts of form. I was thinking on the lines of input fields.
Okay, that makes sense then.
Okay.
I'll
We have
change
another
this
question on Slido. So Anonymous, again, Anonymous is very active today, is asking,
Yeah.
when do you know you're done with prototyping?
Okay, so that's it. You don't know when you're done with prototyping unless you get feedback from users. Here, this is the cycle that signals you when you're done with prototyping. If your checklist of satisfaction, you might want to set a hypothesis to say, if users accept this, and that, if this kind of feedback is gotten from users, then I'll know I'm done. And then you go to the users. So this cycle is very important.
Okay, awesome.
If Anonymous is not satisfied, you can chip in.
I don't know if they are, but Anonymous has another question. They say, great presentation on Firebase or Slack. You have been building your app for a while. Is it still a prototype? Smiley face.
Oh man. Yeah, so I built this app. First, I used it as a project for my campus so that I finish school. So whenever I present it to a few users and my supervisor, they give me more feedback, what to change and what to work on. So it's a prototype. I've been changing stuff like crazy. And I've been trying to add things here and there to make it fancy. So it's a crazy prototype.
Oops, sorry, I was muted. I was speaking. Awesome. We have another question on Slido from Anonymous again. And they say, you may have addressed this, but I may have missed it. And the question is, what are the advantages of using Firebase? Or disadvantages, sorry, not advantages.
Oh, sorry, I skipped that. I made Firebase look like a perfect thing, the best on earth. And also, Firebase is really, let's say, it's not the, so some of the disadvantages, like the kind of relationships you want to have in your data might differ from the normal relational databases. For example, in, where is the app? Random. No, sorry. Random is not the one. developerISH demo. Yeah. If we go to the database, you notice that we have collections. We have collections, and they can't be related the way they used to be, the way we build our traditional tables, which are very robust. Here, I was forced to add an author directly in a message, and this message collection is in no way related to the user's collection. they don't know each other. This just happens to have an email from the user's collection. And that's tiring in terms of how to fetch data and relate them. If I wanted to fetch a lot of data from the user and also fetch their messages and put them together, for example, like in WhatsApp, it would have been a different struggle, because now I'll have to fetch them continuously, or fetch and then look if author is this. Whereas in a relational database, you can fetch a user and then relate it to their messages, and all their messages will come there. So for me, that's the biggest disadvantage with the Firestore or Firebase databases. And also, if you start another collection, this will be a sub collection of messages. You see, we have a collection called messages, and we'll have, let's say, replies. We have a sub collection of messages called replies. And then let's say this is a primary key, something, and save it. So we shall have a sub collection. Like, how do you even fetch sub collections? I've watched a lot of videos from the people who created Firestore, and they're saying it's a very good thing, but then it will be overwhelming for you to write the code to fetch sub collection. And what's the limit? Do you even want to know the limit? Like, how many sub collections can you nest in each? So it can become really complex for you while trying to manipulate the data that you have in this database. But some people have come up with better ways of doing things, in that they don't do sub collections anymore. They just do collections and then relate them with such things like ID of the other collection or an author of the other collection. Another disadvantage is there are very few that I can think of, but if you approach development as I have done it right now, it will not work in some apps that need server-side code. For example, if I were to set my app to have a subscription and every month it bills people, I wouldn't write that in a front-end code, because when someone closes their browser, my code won't run again. So you'll need some server-side code, maybe Node or something. But that is where cloud functions come in. That's all I can think about for Firebase.
All right, awesome. Okay, so there's another question, but this is not on Slido, this is in chat. Quite asks, I might have missed it, but I would have wished you had touched on the differences between real-time database and Cloud Firestore.
Oh, yeah.
What you're using, yeah, what's the difference?
Okay, so the difference is it has said this one is real-time, like you use it for things that don't require you to let's think. You don't need to listen to get the real-time change. So you just make a change and your data will actually come and update in your front end. It is used most in mobile applications where instant feedback is required. But this is it's like this is like a fully fledged database. Let's look at the real time. It's not as robust as the Firestore. A Firestore is like MongoDB. You store your documents and all that. But this is, I think, what do we say about this real-time Firebase? You store some documents that are just very shallow in some way. I think we should Google more differences because I clearly don't have any.
Okay, good. That's a good assignment. I hadn't actually noticed the two, CloudFire Store and yeah. And Koet says he's been using real-time database and he sees no difference. Like he sees that they work mostly the same. Maybe there's a difference in cost. I don't know.
So you are talking about, the difference in cost is really significant. The real time is more expensive somehow.
Okay. Cool. So Anonymous has not asked any more questions on Slido.
Okay.
And I see no more questions on chat. And if like in the next 5 seconds, someone doesn't unmute and ask a question, I think we can call it a wrap.
Yeah, we actually over time.
Like
This is more of a comment.
Okay.
Yeah. That's all I wanted to say. But thank you so much for the presentation.
Typical Kenyan. Mine is more of a comment. Yeah, awesome. So thank you very much, Hoslak. Very educative session, and thank you very much for everyone who attended and participated. And I think with that, we can call it a wrap. I'm going to stop the live stream.
A wrap, moi.
All right. Bye, people.